There's a lot of information here, a lot of information, research, papers, drafts, took notes, more notes, ideas. I mean, it is very overwhelming, but I enjoy the process. So instead of doing it very formal, which I had the intention to before, I think I'm just gonna do this in the most, not informal, but less academic. Because I think it corresponds more with my way of delivering things. I am a teacher by nature. As a matter of fact, everyone that I've been in conversations in reference to specific topics or any conversation that has ended up in discussions about sharing information, I've always been told that I'm good at doing that. So I figured I'm going to share this. I'm going to share something that is very, very important in my life. It's, it's something really, really very grounding to me, and I'd like to share it. And I created this space, right, beyond change, because I want to be that. I want to explain things beyond change, beyond what's supposed to be, beyond the norm per se. And this corner is just for that. It's my private corner where I want to build a community, where I'm going to be sharing my perspectives and a little bit of my life. And yeah, so today's topic, it's going to be a very interesting topic. It is very, very fascinating topic. It's about the neurobiology of yoga. See, I've been practicing yoga for more than 20 years. And every time I stop and think about the reasons why I started, they're not the reasons that I like it now. I don't know if I'm making sense. So when I started this practice, because, I was very curious about the whole point of doing these fascinating movements in the body. And without knowing it, I was looking for something much deeper, to the point where I actually did a couple of teacher trainings. I became a yoga teacher a couple of times, and I never liked those trainings until I found something very close to my heart, and it was just a pure realization of what yoga was for me. Much deeper than just being a studio yoga teacher. And please, 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 I love all yoga teachers. I think they're all amazing, and we need them totally. So, but this is my own experience, so I don't want to relay the wrong message here. I just want to say that I have the most immense appreciation for all the yoga teachers in the world, for what they do, for what their mission is, their personal mission. I used to be a yoga teacher. I used to be one who go to studios and teach, but it wasn't really for me. I just decided to teach in just one place where I felt that I was doing the most of my work as a teacher, based on the fact that I felt connected and I met the most amazing people around the world, from around the world. So until one day I said, no more, no more. I did it. I did it for many years, and I decided to not to do it anymore at that level. And personally, my teacher told me a few months ago, he said, I know you don't want to teach anymore, but I think it's important that you share your knowledge, and that would be your way of teaching without feeling that you're teaching. And it's not that I don't want to teach, it's just I don't, I think there are great teachers out there and they deserve the opportunity to embark in that journey. And I did it already, and I think it's important to give opportunity to other teachers. So, by the way, something that you should know about me is that I really love herbal teas. I love herbal teas. This is mint and lemongrass with, believe it or not, a little bit of oregano. It gives that little spice. Anyway, so today is the neurobiology of yoga. And it's fascinating because this topic to me, because yoga has been in this planet for thousands of years. And so other philosophies, right? Like Socrates, Stoicism, it's been for thousands of years. But yoga has been very interesting because in the last, I would say, 15, 20 years, science have been investigating about the effects of yoga in the body. So, and lately, neuroscience have been very interested in finding, what is this whole yoga science all about, and what are the results or the effects in the body, especially in the brain of the practitioner. And it's fascinating because I see that, the neuroscience in general is always looking out for answers, and they're looking at yoga science now. And that makes me really, really happy. So I went deep into some research, and I think it took me almost a month, and I have all these pages and pages that I printed out and I reviewed. And like I said, I did, you know, hundreds of notes, and like it's unbelievable. I went deep into it, and I really, really love this. So I want to share this information. And I guess I divided this presentation in different parts, but I'd like to start with what is the main concept of the yoga, right? Everybody knows, and you probably heard, that yoga is union, right? Is the most common recognition of what this practice is all about, right? The union. And people say it's the union of the self with a higher self, or with a higher state of consciousness. And that's wonderful. Now, yoga had many representatives, per se. And one of them, I guess, is the most popular in the West, was Maharishi Patanjali. Maharishi Patanjali was a yogi who decided to put together all this information in different books, right? And he wrote everybody knows this, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And he decided to start the first recipe. A sutra is like a recipe. He's like saying, hey guys, this is what this yoga is all about. And I'm going to put it in different recipes, and you're going to follow this. And it's up to you. Pretty much, it's up to you. He said, don't believe it, just try it, and then you will see. So the first thing he said, Hatha Yoga Shusasanam. It's the first sutra that stands for, this is the moment, this is a very auspicious moment to start the knowledge of yoga, right? And that's how he starts. It's the first chapter per se of his book. And then he followed by saying that yogas chitta vritti nirodha. And in essence, this recipe is saying that yoga is the cessation. Okay, it's a mechanism to pacify the thinking process. Okay, so yoga right? So vritti, which is the main word here that we need to understand, is this modulation of mind. So it is these activities, the mental activities that we all have, that we all experience every day, all the time, and even when we're sleeping. And yes, dreaming, for instance, is vrittis. In dreaming state, right? In the dream state is where the mind, that's what it does, because there's no a direct awareness of ourselves. And the mind is like, here I am, I'm free. I'm going to be free for a while, a couple of hours through the night while this body is sleeping, and I'm going to do whatever I want, basically. And that's what the mind does. So this vritti is a modulation of mind. Okay, we have different modulations according to certain aspects of the science of yoga. There are 5 modulations, but this is not the topic of this presentation. Okay, I call this an essay, and I think I'm going to be calling these not vlogs but essays. I don't know. So, but I'm having fun. That's the whole point. And according to my research, through neuroscience, the effects of the practices of yoga have been verified by neuroscientists. And my God, my glasses are so dirty. I gotta clean my glasses. Here they are. I ordered new glasses and they're supposed to come. I got the email that they said your glasses have been shipped, because I used to, and I still do, I use my glasses all the time, and these glasses are so expensive that I used to pay like $800,000 for a pair of glasses. And that was really, really kind of like nonsense. And I realized, hey, I'm not rich, I'm not have that kind of money to start spending a lot of money. So I spent $150, $200 on a pair of glasses, and I can afford that. So so the neurobiology of yoga has been studied by these neuroscientists, and what they're trying to, I guess, find out is, what happens in the brain when the person practices yoga. What happens particularly in the networks in the brain while somebody is practicing yoga. And when I say the practice of yoga, I mean the aspect of meditation, the aspect of breathing exercises, and also the aspect of the physical exercise, the physical movement. They're called asanas. And by the way, the breathing techniques are called pranayama. Pranayama is a technique or a series of techniques that yogis put together in order to have certain benefits at the level of the nervous system, at the level of the mind. And here is where neuroscience is actually focusing on. And I kind of like prepared this and I typed it and everything. It was really fun. It was really, really fun, right? And what this essay is trying to convey to you is basic information. I don't want to do this at a super complicated level. I just want to convey the information so that you can experience a little more about this science. And maybe if you have never tried it, or if you are someone who practices yoga, especially at the physical level, you will be able to understand much more about what is this science all about, right? So, as I said, according to Patanjali Maharishi, yoga is defined as the silencing of the modulations of the mind. So, yeah, it's this vritti. This vritti, by the way, is a Sanskrit word that can be translated into vortex. So imagine our thoughts, okay, just a bunch of vortices, right? It's just swirling around on and on and on and on and on. And tomorrow they'll do the same. And most likely they're going to be the same thoughts, and they're going to be carry the same information, and they're going to carry the same energy. And therefore, the energy is going to convey an emotion, and the emotion is going to generate another thought, and it's a never-ending process. So, and what happens is these thoughts have a tendency, and these tendencies are called samskaras, okay? Or these are like imprints in the mind. And these samskaras generate as they repeat, because they are embedded in the vritti, okay? They are like part of the thinking process, it's part of the thought. They generate a much powerful presence in the mind. And these are called vasanas. So the more you write, like for instance, if you start writing a piece of paper, right, and then you erase it, and then you write it again, and you erase it, and you write it again, eventually you can do this with your eyes closed, correct? But at the same time, if you touch the surface of the paper, you're going to see it move already in the paper. That's called a vasana. The practice of doing it all over and again is called a samskara. But the groove that you're generating in the paper, it's called a vasana. And this exactly happens in our minds. Now, and the reason this happens is because we are experiencing afflictions. And this is according to Patanjali, right? And he called these afflictions Kleshas. So a klesha is, again, a Sanskrit word that represents an affliction or something that we're always being a victim of, okay? So these kleshas are the nature of our vrittis, and the kleshas are the reasons why we suffer. So just to review, so the concept the of the understanding what yoga is, right? And the reasons why we suffer, and you see this, we all can be eliminated by the cessation of the modulations of the mind. See? So that's why Patanjali said, yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, right? This is yoga is the cessations of the modulations of the mind. That's basically what it is. Now, did he say, or he's saying that yoga is when the mind stops thinking? No. And that we can talk about that in another video, in another presentation. No, he's not saying that. Okay? He's just saying that this is what yoga is. But as we continue in our exploration of this beautiful science, we'll realize that it is impossible to really stop the mind from thinking. Okay? It is impossible. The only way, okay, that the mind stops thinking is in what we call the deep sleep state. In deep sleep state, okay, and this is, I'm like going a little bit further, and I shouldn't be doing this, but I feel the need to explain this so that you can understand this process better. So we have different states, right? We have the waking state, which is this one. I'm in the waking state, right? I'm here. I'm awake, meaning I'm making a video, right? Some people are working, some people are driving. So this is the waking state, right? And then we have the dream state. That's when we go to sleep at night and the mind dreams. And mind, that's what it does. Keeps thinking, you see. And then we have the deep sleep state, where there is no awareness of the mind. There's no awareness of the mind, right? There is like deep rest. So when you wake up the next morning, you feel like, oh, I had a great night. And how do you know that you had a great night? So I don't want to go into this part, but it's fascinating. So how do you know that you had a great night? If you didn't have awareness of the mind wasn't aware of reality. You were just sleeping. Or you say you had a good night because you feel good, correct? But how can you feel good? You feel good at the moment. You feel good at the moment. You feel good while the process of deep sleep was happening. So that is, according to the yogis, is consciousness. There is another awareness there present that is witnessing the process of deep sleep. But anyway, so you see that how complex it is. So that's why I'm saying you cannot stop. And Patanjali is not saying yoga is stopping the mind. No, 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 no. Right? Yeah, I guess the word is cessation, but he never uses the word as something that is definite. Okay? So, but anyway, so let's leave it as that. And now in modern science, right, nowadays, those kleshas, those afflictions, the neuroscience calls those depression, anxiety, stress, um, addictions. Okay, those are the Kleshas according to neuroscience, and these generate certain chemicals in the brain, right, that inhibit the ability for the person to realize what's going on. And neuroscience like to study the science of yoga because they know that these Kleshas also are affecting the different circuitries or circuitries in our body, like especially the nervous system, right, and the networks in our brains, in the neurons, right. This is all being affected by these Kleshas, right, these modern Kleshas. So neuroscience wants to study the effects of the different practices of yoga, so that they can understand and verify that yoga could be also a tool, okay, an additional tool that you can have in your toolbox, or anyone can have in their toolbox to use, to utilize, right, in order to create a better outcome in life. So, hope I'm making sense. And let's continue. So I already explained about the concept of samskara and vasana, right? In neuroscience, we can say that a samskara, pheresis, or a vasana could be an OCD behavior, right? A compulsive behavior. An addiction could be also a samskara, right? And when somebody has any addictions, it's a dopamine effect, right? It's the reward um, um, system that we have in our brains, that when we feel that we deserve something or that we want something because we deserve it, right? Dopamine is released, and then it's a loop. It's a never-ending loop, right? And even though the person might be able to see that this is what's happening, it is so strong. The vasana is so strong that you cannot get out of the loop, and therefore you stay there, and then you continue generating a deeper groove in the mind, right? And you generate these habits. These habits are, basically vasanas. They're good habits, right? Like habits that are beneficial to me and to you, and that are bad habits that are not beneficial to you, right? So they're like kind of like a productive habits and non-productive habits. So now these, again, these synapses per se, right? These behaviors at the neurological level generate outcomes that are not really in benefit or beneficial to the person. And that's when, or where yoga can potentially come to the rest. Okay, so one of the things that I want to continue talking about is pranayama. Pranayama is the different breathing techniques that are used to pacify the mind, to regulate the nervous system, especially the parasympathetic nervous system, and therefore be able to find some kind of a relaxation, natural relaxation, and be able to minimize the activity of the neurons in the brain, and therefore the thinking process, right? The mind pacifies, the mind gets calm. That doesn't mean the mind stops thinking. The mind will always think. But the force, the energy of the thinking process will be much, much subtler. It'll be much slower. Okay, very subtle, slower, sort of like you can control it. One of the things that people say and they feel is that when they're trying to meditate, they say, this is not for me because my mind can't stop thinking. I can't stop thinking. And it's just such a waste of time for me. And they don't continue with their practice. They give up because the mind is so powerful. It's so powerful. So when the person, the individual, decides to understand the mind and that there's just a little bit of effort that they have to put on so that they can actually start learning how to control the mind, then things changes. Okay. Now, consciousness, right? It's part of the mind, right? But it's not the mind itself. Okay. So consciousness is the capacity of the brain to generate a subjective experience. Okay. The brain is capable of generating a subjective experience, but it's not the mind per se. Okay, it's totally organic per se in reference to an organ, right? It's an organ, the brain that has that ability. Okay, it's fascinating what our brains can do, but it's part of the generation of consciousness. Okay, but it's not the mind. I just want to clarify this is very important. There are, according to the studies, so we have fast pranayamas such as Kapalabhati. I already discussed that. Kapalabhati, Vastrika pranayams, they are really fast. Okay, they're really fast and it accelerates the heart and the circulation gets faster, and then the amount of oxygen that it's being generated, it's a lot. Okay, and then we have slow pranayama such as Nanishodhana pranayama, which is very effective, or Anuloma Viloma, which is the alternate breathing techniques. You breathe through the left nostril, then the right nostril, the left nostril, then the right nostril. Okay? And you have pranayama and Savitri pranayama. Savitri pranayama is just basically the end of Natishodhana, and then it leads you into meditation. It's very, very soothing type of breathing, kind of like almost that you don't feel like you're breathing. Okay? Now, what's interesting is that I want to share today, based on my research, says that major results are seen after 10 weeks of steady practice, right? So when you practice constantly, after 10 weeks, you're going to start seeing results, and seeing results from the mental standpoint, right? More relaxation, the mood changes. People have sort of like the restoration of the senses. Okay, people start feeling more. They start like feeling more connected to their bodies. Okay, now keep in mind that in any way neuroscience is saying that this is replacing psychotherapy. No, this has nothing to do with any part of psychology Okay, this is just about cognitive behaviors, the mental or control of the mental fluctuations, right? Movements of the mind. Okay. But in any way, this is saying that this will replace psychotherapy in any way. So now this is very, very interesting. When you are finishing your practice of meditation, okay, you are going to be so immersed, okay, in the practice, right? When you're finalizing, when you're just experience this peace, this relaxation for a while, towards the end of that, you're going to start falling into what it's called pratyahara. Pratyahara is again, a Sanskrit term that means blocking or disconnection. Okay, and what's happening is you are being disconnected from the senses, right? Because you have to understand what makes us feel reality, okay, that's why I'm using the word feel, is our senses, right? Because we have senses. We can smell, we can hear, we can taste, we can see, correct? And those are the ones that are going to connect us with reality. So pratyahara is the disconnect of that. And that is experienced in the practice of meditation, in a meditative state. Okay, that's pratyahara. So, and what's happening is, according to neuroscience, and the research says here that this practice has positive cognitive effects. Yes, and it makes sense because when you are completely disconnected from the senses per se, there is no manipulations of reality. There's no external pressures anymore. It's just you, right? And the alpha waves of the brain, right, begin to activate. And then there's this sense of peace, tranquility, right? The alpha waves, the theta waves, they all start to, activate, and then it makes you feel very, very, this is not about relaxation like the physical relaxation. This is mental relaxation. This is what the yogis call spiritual relaxation, which is much deeper than the body relaxation. So this is what pratyahara is. But see, you go from the process of understanding what yoga is to the pranayamas, then towards the slowing of the breath that leads you into a meditative state, that is going to take you to the state of disconnection from the senses, which is pratyahara, right? That's, in essence, I would say the path, okay, that neuroscientists have been studying, right? And like I said, I have 5 studies here, 5 reports here, 5 papers that I've read, and they all say the same thing. It's really fascinating. Okay, so different part of the brain, okay, several cortical structures are affected by the continued practice of meditation. So there's actually a change in the brain. The volume of gray matter also increases when you practice meditation. So meditation is not just something that you're going to practice on weekends, of course, on whenever you feel like sad or no, meditation is a practice that has to be implemented methodically, okay, and it has to be constant. So you have to commit to the practice of meditation for the rest of your life. Yeah. If you want to find the benefits, there will be benefits that you can experience the same time you meditate, but a true powerful benefit happens with years of practice. Okay, so I hope I make myself clear with that. But hey, you need to start one day, correct? So the sooner the better. And then what happens is when you meditate, right? And I noted it here, my notes here, up right here, right? So senescence is the aspect of it is related to getting old. Okay, so what is senescence, right? So I'll explain to you because I think it's better if I put it in a diagram. Senescence is when cells stop renewing. Here we have a healthy cell, completely healthy, active. Then we have the stressed cell, which is probably tired with toxins. And then we have the senescent cell, the one that stopped renewing. And this is the typical process of aging, and this happens also in the brain at the level of the neurons. The healthy cell is alive, right, and continue renewing. Then you have the stress cell that is basically under a lot of pressure. It's getting tired. And the one that is not growing anymore is the one that is dying, and it dies eventually. So this process, right, when the neuroscientists studying techniques such as the breath and meditation, they realize that this process takes longer. So in other words, the renewal process is in a way better. And the last thing that I want to talk about is asanas. And this is a very important aspect of yoga, especially the one that perhaps is the most known in the Western hemisphere, because yoga has been always been related to the practice of asana, the yogas that you, when you go to the studios, and then you practice the movement of the body. So asana, according to yoga, is from divine nature, right? The scriptures teach you that asana was downloaded, per se, to the yogis from Shiva. Shiva being the Adi yogi, the first yogi, right? And Shiva taught asanas to his wife, Parvati, and with the full purpose of divinity. Each pose has a meaning and is being designed to manifest a higher level of consciousness. So it's not just to lose weight or to become very flexible, right? It's not about learning how to stand on your head or stand on your shoulders. Yeah, I mean, it's not the purpose of asana or doing yoga asana is not that, okay? It is sort of like a secondary effect, yes, but it's not the main purpose. So the main purpose is to understand that while you're doing the movement, right, you're working with your brain, you're working with your nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, right? And you understand that what you're managing in this case is prana, which is the vital energy that we all have. And the prana is running around the body, and as you move the body in certain ways, in certain angles, then you are managing the prana and allowing the energy to feed the internal organs, rejuvenating the internal organs, detoxifying the internal organs, so that you can be healthy and live in a healthy body so that you can practice sadhana, which is kind of like the spiritual practice of the yogi. And in essence, neuroscience is saying that when you are practicing asanas, you're also sending these signals to the brain, particularly to our frontal cortex, that takes that information and then disseminates information to different parts of the brain, right? Different sides of the brain. And again, it produces a great effect, mental effects, allowing the person to calm down the mind, again, to reduce the level of modulations in the brain, those vrittis that we were talking about, and just be better. Okay, so I think I've been able to explain this in a very simple way. The research is amazing. I'm going to continue doing research. I think it's always important to continue investigating, these powerful ancient sciences that now are coming to the surface again, but with a modern perspective, right? Who knows what's happening in the future with when they realize that maybe yoga can actually or potentially do something even better to human consciousness. Okay. All right. So we'll continue. And I think my next essay will be about neuroscience of consciousness, which I am fascinated by it, and also related to the science of yoga, the science of the neuroscience of meditation, science of consciousness, and topics like that, who are the ones that I like the most. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this time, and I thank you for your attention, and looking forward to see you in the next presentation. If you enjoy this video, of course, if you can just subscribe, it'll help the algorithm. And if you like it, just give me a thumbs up. And you know what to do. So, okay, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.